Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Joe and I have been going to Stamford Bridge for over 30 years. For the past 3 years, we've been exchanging voice notes on everything from the highs in Porto to the lows of Potter. Each week, this podcast will take you inside our unfiltered thoughts on all things Chelsea, sharing our view from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes.
And there goes the full-time whistle. Chelsea finally have a win after what feels like forever. Wow. Not a brilliant night, I'll be honest with you. I mean, a good win. Can't fault that, obviously. We needed it badly, but my word, we were made to work for it. Wolves, who basically did nothing for 40 minutes in the first half, could have gone in with a lead, which is typical just at the moment of how Chelsea are playing. Complete dominance, I'd say, for the first 40 minutes. We took a goal that was, checked the VAR, that obviously was clearly onside, and then proceeded to almost give the game away on half-time with firstly, just a comedy of errors. Sanchez again, who hadn't touched the ball up until that point, passing out to the opposition yet again on the edge of his own box, and then completely failing to deal with a cross that came in under his near post, and instead of punching with 2 or 3 players around him, decided he'd try and catch it and dropping it on the goal line for the Wolves player to tap in. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic. I mean, he's just a disaster waiting to happen every single week. And I said at the start of this podcast journey that we would need to replace him pretty quickly because he's going to cost us so many points. He's already conceded the most amount of chances leading to goals, most errors leading to goals of any other Premier League goalkeeper so far this season. He's bottom end Premier League, let's be fair. And I'm going to stand by that. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I've said that before, but he is just not good enough. You heard with a 3-1 lead with a couple of minutes to go, he passed one out from his own 18-yard box into midfield, and the whole ground just went... He just fills you with no confidence whatsoever, and he doesn't mean to do it, but I said he would cost us 10, 12, 15 points, and he's already cost us those, that many points, I'd say, in certain games. He's had 1 or 2 decent starts, but overall, he's just not good enough. At the back, I thought we were much safer looking. I thought Trevoh Chalobah coming in for his debut for the season was absolutely brilliant. He did really well, and to be quite frank, we've missed him. We've really missed him, and he looked a cut above all of our defenders, in the central area today. I can't wait for Levi Colwill and Chalobah to play together, because I think that's going to be the pairing from now on until Fofana gets himself fit and back in the team. But yeah, he was just so good. He's raking through balls. Were good in the first half. His passing generally throughout the back was just really neat and tidy, always crisp and accurate, pinging balls into people like any good defender or any good player should do. He just looked, again, a real threat in the box. He obviously came up with the header for the 3rd goal, which was tapped in the line by Madueke, but I mean, he was the one that was up there challenging. I mean, how many times we had a defender go up for a corner this season and get absolutely nowhere near one? He got almost the first one he went up for. Yeah, really impressed with Trev. I thought Tosin had an okay game. Obviously, he scored his goal, which is fair play to him. We needed some other players to step up with some goals other than Palmer, and he did that. But it was a good finish from him. But overall, he had an okay game. He wasn't outstanding. Again, there's too many little errors, unfortunately. Positionally, for me, he's a little bit suspect, particularly on the balls that go either through the line or over the top. He gets himself in a little bit of the wrong position. But again, he's perfectly sort of acceptable for certain games. In defence, it was nice to see Reece James back on playing from the start. He was so good. What he's great at, Reece, is jumping into midfield and nicking the ball, just before it gets to the attackers. And when he is in there, he's then great to have in midfield because he can play a ball wide left, wide right, over the top, into Jackson, etc. So he's a brilliant addition. And like I say, when he's in the team for us, I always feel so much better, although I wasn't impressed with his sort of 4 or 5 absolute Hail Mary runs. We had corners and free kicks inside the first 15, 20 minutes, and he must have sprinted full tilt 4 or 5 times back to his own 18-yard box from our 18-yard box. And I thought to myself, that is not what we need him to be doing. I mean, for me, he stays back from corners. I mean, I know he's great to have on the edge of the box when the ball gets pinged out. He can lash one in, but oh my word, it really put the willies at me every time I saw him sprint back, 80 yards. And not only that, obviously, Wolves broke with real pace in the first half from those instances. But yeah, great to have him back. Cucurella obviously had a decent game and he scored his goal. I thought he was, very good today. Cucurella, he's always a nuisance. He's always a threat. I thought he's getting himself in the box so often now. He should have scored against Bournemouth, I think it was last week or in midweek with that header. He headed straight at the goalkeeper, but he scored against Brentford recently. He scored again today. So he's making a real difference. I've got to say, I think Noni and Neto, for as busy as they were, I thought they were pretty toothless, actually. I know Noni ended up getting a goal towards the end, but, I think even I could have nodded that in from the goal line. They do a lot of step overs, they do a lot of running up and down the wing, but there's not a lot of end products, and they're not what I call shooting at goal anymore. At least when Sancho comes on, I keep saying that. He's direct, he cuts in, and you feel as though he's going to ping one in the bottom corner, whereas at the moment, Noni doesn't seem to want to shoot very much, and Neto doesn't seem to shoot at all, which is a little bit weird, but they're both very good players, don't get me wrong, but I just feel as though, I'm not sure they're lacking confidence, but there's just something not quite right there, and they're not kind of adding to the goal tally. And I think Palmer certainly needs help in those stakes. It can't just come from the two defenders. In midfield, the two midfield players, obviously Dewsbury Hall getting a start today. I mean, I'm not even sure if he started in the Premier League for us yet, but I'm sure he has once. But I just feel as though he had an okay game. He certainly wasn't. He tried hard. He worked very hard. He got himself back in good defensive positions. There's just a slight lack of quality, I think, in that central area. I mean, but what I would say is this: he hasn't had much of a chance, and I don't want to come on here and criticise Dewsbury Hall because I think it'd be really unfair of me to do that. He had in a perfectly acceptable game today, considering the opposition. I mean, you don't want him playing against Man City overly. If that's your option, then so be it. But I just feel as though why we're not bringing back a midfield player. When we made our substitutions in the second half, we put Cucurella into midfield, and I just think to myself, we've got Santos on loan, we've got Ugochukwu on loan. Lavia is never fit, and by the way, I can't call somebody out for being injured. It's like calling Reece James out for being injured. But we spent £50 million on a central midfield player who never plays. He plays 45 minutes and then gets taken off a sub, and then we don't see him again. When he'll play again for Chelsea, I don't know. He might play against Man City. He might not play for another 6 weeks. And it's just not good enough because you can't build a midfield around someone who's never available. And it's really starting to drive me mad. The Lavia thing is not being picked up by many people. It's just like, oh, isn't he a good player? Yeah, he's a good player. But if he doesn't play, what's the point? I think overall, up front, Palmer was fairly quiet. He was busy in the first half. I think he went out of the game in the second half. He did get quite a bad tackle in the first half. And I just thought to myself, was that part of the reason why he didn't get involved quite so much in the second period? I'm not too sure. Obviously, he's being double and triple marked at times, and that should create a load of options for other players. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure that those other players are taking the chances when they're getting them. But Palmer was fine. He was perfectly okay. And again, just because he doesn't score or assist doesn't mean he wasn't involved. He was still involved and did plenty, but maybe not his best night. And as for Jackson, wow. I mean, this guy at the moment he's let's be fair, he's really thick. I mean, for somebody who plays as a number 9, I know he wasn't bought as a number 9, but he's been playing there for about 2 seasons now. Somebody needs to get him a bit of paper and a pen and show him what the offside rule is, because I watched him. I started to watch him in the first half, and I thought, we're going to keep watching you now. Every time he made a run, he was at least a yard or 2 offside. You can see it from a mile off. You don't need to be close. You don't need to draw lines for Jackson. You know immediately, and it's almost like even when he scored his goal that was disallowed, you knew exactly that he was going to be offside. And even he turned around and was like, yeah, no, I am. And it's like, what is the point in you being there? Playing on the shoulder of the last defender is what any good striker is always told. But any good striker worth their salt knows where the left back is, where the right back is, and they can see along the line and they make their run off the furthest line defender. But Jackson he never looks at the defence. He looks at the ball that's been played to him, and he's got his head down. He runs forward, and then the defensive unit just stand up and play him offside every single time, and it is just getting really boring. I'm getting quite sick and tired of watching Jackson at the moment. He needs bringing out this side, and I've said it last week. If the club don't know by now, we need a number 9 in this team, then we are seriously going to struggle. Because if we can rely on Jackson to the end of the season, he will get a goal or two here and there. He will, because law of averages says he will. But we cannot be relying on this guy to finish in the top 4 or 5. And to me, it's just so blindingly obvious. If West Ham are bidding £57 million for John Duran tonight, then clearly it's been rejected. But if there's offers being made like that for strikers and we're not part of the conversation, then I just feel as though we're really missing the trick. It's just bad business. Confidence is a massive thing in football, and I know that, and we've been lacking it massively in the last sort of few games. We play well for big periods, and then we go off the boil completely, and we had a big period in the first half with that. But I just think as though tonight was about winning. Maresca needed a win. Man City to come. Look, we haven't got a crystal ball. They have hit a bit of form. They have scored a few goals of late. I still feel as though we are capable of getting a result against Man City, and I feel as though that if we can, it might be a bit of a catalyst for us to spur us on for the next few games. And I said in my sort of pod note last week that we get, if we could win 4, 5, or 6 to our next 6 games, and 6 games out of 6 is a huge ask. I know that, but if we could win 4 or 5 and maybe draw 1, then it will put us in a really good positive position in 6 weeks' time. So we've got to look forward. We've got to look to kind of go to these away grounds and take victories. Our home form is actually where we struggled quite a bit. I think we're 10th in games played at home in the Premier League this season, which really isn't good enough. If we can get some players back, particularly a fit Lavia, Enzo, Caicedo consistently in the team, Reece James back consistently in the team. If we can get Jadon Sancho, firing all cylinders and whipping the balls in from left and right on his side, and a fit Levi Colwill and Trevoh Chalobah playing at the back, I think that gives us a really good springboard for the rest of the season. But like I say, we need to get these players back fit and ready and firing. I mean, really pleased. Don't get me wrong. This is supposed to be a kind of an upbeat, podcast and podcast note, but things do need calling out when you see them. But for me, great to win. Really pleased that we won the game. Desperately needed it. And quite frankly, you don't care how they come sometimes. You just got to get them won. Really pleased for the victory. And yeah, Chris, pick the bones out of that, mate. See what you think.
Good morning from a cold Germany. First thing to say is, what a relief. I'm not being funny. What a relief to win a game. It just felt so important, didn't it? And at 1-0 you were nervous. At 2-1, you just thought, no, we need a third here. And then even at 3-1, with 15 minutes to go, I WhatsApped you, didn't I? And said, yeah, don't trust us yet. And it probably wasn't until, honestly, about the 91st minute that I actually genuinely relaxed and thought, okay, we should be fine now. Yeah, that was a little frightening, but great to be back winning a game again and actually be able to look at the league table this morning. It's not actually that bad, considering we hadn't won, was it in 36 days, I think Andy put on the WhatsApp group, which is insane. It's, we're obviously well off where we were, but 4 points behind Forest and Arsenal, I think it is, and back in 4th. And as you say, it's so important now to use that and build a bit of momentum into our season again. I said to you, at 1-1, I was like, with these players, you can really see the confidence had gone. It's just sport, isn't it? It's the mad thing about sport, how every single player, when you're playing well, wants the ball, touch is good, just generally playing with freedom, and that had completely gone. And you just see it. It's just lots of little things. In that last 5-10 minutes of the first half, when we were really under the cosh, it just didn't like any players really wanted the ball. And there was a couple of moments where Reece James had it at right back, and he almost actually just hold on to it for, did a couple of pirouettes and just end up clipping the ball down the line because there was no one really on. And when you're playing well, everyone wants the ball. You've got 3 options, even when you play at Sunday league level, it's the same. When you're winning a game, doing well, everyone wants the ball, and then when you're not, it's suddenly you're on your own. Yeah, that's my hope, I think, is that does galvanise the group a little bit. It doesn't really matter how you win. Just getting a win in the system again, I think, is important, and hopefully move forward. It was good to see at the end that Maresca did what he's been doing all season, and we knew he would, which is getting the players doing a little lap of honour, going around greeting the fans and stuff, because it's not the sort of thing you'd normally think to do after a tie. Let's be honest, not an amazing win at home to Wolves, but again, important, I think, that the players enjoy those moments, and they'll all wake up today back at the training ground with a bit of spring in the step again and back on the winning horse. So that was just so important, wasn't it? And God, the relief I felt. I watched the game in Munich. I'm here for work, as you know, and I watched part of the second half from the bath. So that's my routine: bath, beer, and laptop, just delicately on the sink. So yeah, thought you'd enjoy my watching experience. I forgot to talk about Chalobah. I think he's better than I remember, and few people I know, Smudge being one of them, always said he really rated him. And I think I always liked him as a player. I thought he was good, but I always thought he's not quite the level we need to get to. And that might still be the case, but him coming back, it's amazing when someone goes away and comes back, you kind of you need that sometimes to realise how good they are. Sadly, often the case with youngsters, isn't it, who've come through your academy. So I hold my hands up there, but he came in and you compare him to Disassi, Badiashile, Tosin even, who I thought played okay, but just the quality he's got. I mean, a couple of really brilliant defensive moments that are obvious, weren't they, with that great tackle in the first half and stuff like that. But it was the passing range for me. It was like, this is a guy who's played alongside Thiago Silva for 3 years, watched Silva pick out those short passes and long passes at ease, and he was doing it. Like, played a couple of beautiful clipped balls forward that got us on the attack, and it really adds a different element to our game, having a player at the back that can do that. And you mentioned it there, I'm just so excited by the idea of him and Colwill playing alongside each other. And he's got a bit of experience, he's got leadership, he's a real... It was lovely, really lovely to have him back, and to have him, and as you said, Reece back as well, who's just, it's just a Rolls Royce. It's just so good to have him back on the pitch. And the idea that actually our best back four this season, when Colwill gets back, could have 3 out of the 4 could be Cobham boys. It does fill you with a lot of hope, actually. And I think Chelsea they really have to look at that and not do anything silly this summer in terms of Chalobah. If he plays out the season now, like he did last season, they just need to stop all the talk of ever thinking about getting rid of him, because even if we think we do need another centre-back to bring in, and obviously we've signed another youngster, haven't we, from Strasbourg, keep Chalobah, keep him around. He's the sort of character as well that I think if he is a bit of a rotation option, I don't sense that he would mind that. He loves Chelsea, he wants to be at the club. So yeah, he was just a huge positive. And added to that, which is something we've definitely been lacking, is goals. He's a goal threat from corners. Let's be honest, it was his goal, really. I mean, Madueke nicked it, fair play. If he'd been offside, I don't think I would have forgiven him. Luckily, he wasn't. But basically, 3 of the 4 goals pretty much came from defenders. And how much do we need that right now? Where Jackson's obviously struggling for all the reasons you said. But wow, to have 3 defenders pop up and be a threat like they were, and to be fair, both Chalobah and Tosin are that, more than any of the other defenders that we've got, centre-back wise. Really good from Cucurella as well, and that makes such a difference. And then moving forward to the wingers, like you mentioned, I read a really good Twitter thread yesterday, actually, about the wingers, kind of a breakdown on why they're struggling a little bit to get goals and assists, and it kind of had different reasons for all of them, for Sancho, Madueke and Neto. But the one thing that kind of the point that this thread was making was that all 3 of them would benefit from a real box centre forward, a real box batterer, someone who, if they could put crosses in, is going to be on the end of it. And Jackson, again, we all like him as a player, I think, as much as he frustrates us, but that's just not really his game, is it? He's good arriving late in the box, first time finishes, great running in behind. But in terms of, they're making the example of someone like Lewandowski, and someone who can put crosses in and know he wants to get on the end of everything. And with Neto, for example, playing off the left, it really lends itself then to him putting crosses in. But when we get in those crossing positions, and likewise Madueke cutting in and doing what he does so well, you kind of just think, yeah, if you don't get excited when we put crosses in because you think, I don't know who's going to get on the end of that. Jackson can score with his head, but it's a bit of a biscuit tin head, isn't it? You don't know where it's going to go. And a bit like me. And I think that it's the thing we've said for ages. You've mentioned Duran. I'd like Duran. A different option in games that is very different in profile to Jackson. Somebody you could put on and would be really dangerous in the box. I think would help the wingers as much as it would help the club as well. So, yeah, that's a big one. And the wingers have to start contributing with more goals. You know, fair enough, Madueke nicked the goal. If it gives him a boost and means that he can get a bit of a run going again, scoring goals, then I'm all for it. But yeah, we need them contributing more because it can't all rest on Palmer and Jackson's shoulders, because Palmer's getting marked out of games more often than not, and he's got to try and find new ways to get space. And Jackson's confidence is a bit shot, so that's going to be so important, isn't it? And then final point, what has Nkunku done? It's really weird, isn't it? And the argument would be that, you know, where does he fit in the system? It's the old conversations, but when you got Palmer, who didn't look quite fit, did he? And Jackson struggling, the fact that he doesn't come on the pitch again, was that 2 games running? It's a very strange situation. He's right up there with one of the highest paid players at the club, one of the highest profile, and you've got to wonder what is going on there. The rumours of him going to Bayern have quietened down, haven't they, a bit? And yeah, he has played at the Etihad before and scored a hat-trick for RB Leipzig. I don't think he'll be starting on Saturday, but you've got to think if we need a goal with half an hour to go, surely he's one of the players you look at. But yeah, we will reflect more on that. And yeah, I will head out into the cold of Germany. But speak to you later, mate.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think Trev's performance last night just gave everybody that little bit of confidence that, well, for me, it was that calmness that he brings. He never looks flustered. Is he the finished article? No, I don't subscribe to the fact that Trev is the best player we've ever had in our lives, but he is a very good player. And it seems just a real... It was mismanagement, let's be fair, on everybody's side. And in my opinion, my take on the whole outcome of him leaving on loan was that they were desperately trying to out him for 35 to 45 million pounds in the summer to ease their PSR worries. And they should have just been a bit more upfront. To me, I don't understand why they didn't take him on the American tour. It makes no sense to alienate a player, particularly a player that's been at the club for such a long time, and not include him in that squad. Because if a club comes in for a loan or a purchase to buy, he can just leave the tour or get his agent to do the talks, and then if they're all happy, he can just leave on a plane and go to whichever club he's been assigned to. There was no need to treat him the way they did in the summer. That I find a little bit hard to swallow on his behalf. And you made a point, and rightly so in some ways. He's earning a lot of money a week, but they all are. So I don't think it's fair to treat one player differently to another one, particularly as he was one of our own. And to say that he's earning, I don't know what his salary is. Let's say he's on £120,000 a week. So is Enzo and so is Caicedo, but we wouldn't have treated them that way. For me, that was a big own goal. If they can get him back now and use him properly, hey, who knows what happens next season? If they do decide to go big on a centre back, then I, like you, think there's no reason to offload Trev. But unless there's a huge figure that comes in for him, then I hate to say it, we'll be in this position again next season. But I'm pleased to have him back. It was either him, Mark Gurhey, or someone, wasn't it? They needed an extra body there. And particularly as Levi Colwill was missing this Monday night as well, it would have put us in a real situation of maybe playing Disasi and Tosin at centre-back, and that would have worried the life out of me. Yeah, really pleased to see him back. And that first tackle that you mentioned, or sort of skimmed over there, Chris, was such a brilliant one, wasn't it? It got the crowd up. It got everybody kind of pumped. You can sense Reece James gave a little fist pump after it. And it was just probably a nice moment for him, because it's like, the first thing he had to do, real significant thing he had to do in terms of defending, he passed it with flying colours. And there's that great shot of him looking back towards Sanchez when Sanchez drops the ball for the goal, of him looking back to, and there's like insert caption here, isn't it, moment. But you can just sense with him that there's an element of disappointment with Sanchez. I can't believe that the back four feel particularly comfortable with him. I saw this morning there was a Sky Sports poll: should Sanchez be the Chelsea number one? That's a load of nonsense to me, and I actually think that's quite cruel to put a poll out on Sky Sports, basically debating whether Sanchez should keep his place or not. It's not for you, me, or anybody else to decide, but we can give an opinion on it. But I think that was a bit distasteful, actually. And Maresca probably does need to wake up and smell the roses on the goalkeeper front, but whether he will is, again, it's a decision I don't think he's going to make. I think he's going to stick with Sanchez through hell and high water. But I do think Jorgensen should be given a run of games. But whether he wants to change it before Man City, that's such a big, high-profile match, I'm not too sure. Maybe after that, if he has a bad game against Man City, I think you really do then have to change it and give Jorgensen a go, because I think it's pretty unfair on him, because he's done, in my opinion, very well. We also sort of skimmed over Nkunku. I didn't mention him. You sort of skimmed over him again, Chris. And I, like you, I don't know what's happened, because there's a huge breakdown in communication. You cannot tell me, even if he is Bayern Munich bound, which, by the way, those rumours do seem to have died down a little bit, but if there is a deal happening behind the scenes, he's still a Chelsea player, and we're not blessed with strikers. And in a game where Jackson couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo, I think we needed somebody to come on and just change it. The fact that we were winning the game would have made it easier for Nkunku. He wasn't having to come on to rescue the game. He was coming on to maybe add a fourth, or just generally kind of keep the ball up the other end of the field. I mean, whether or not Maresca is not happy with the way he's playing or training, there may be an element to that. He's very big on his training sessions. If you're not committed to them, he won't play you. But it just seems bonkers to me that you won't even use a player like Nkunku. And then obviously Felix came on for 7-8 minutes from. I'm just trying to think back to the game, and I mean, he was terrible. I mean, he was really poor. He gave it away every single time he got the ball, and that as a manager would drive you insane. But I said last week, there is an element to these players that when you're not playing regular football, it's not so much your form. That can be a factor. You can dip in and out. But I do think there's an element of your mindset just isn't correct. And even if Felix was getting half an hour a week, every single week, and you knew that, okay, at the moment, it's not my time, but maybe Jackson gets injured and I get in the side, or perhaps Neto goes out, or perhaps Palmer gets injured, or whatever, I might get a chance of a run of games. But he realises he probably is the first one to come on in the forward line, but it's usually for about, like we say, 7 to 10 minutes. And I, as a player, wouldn't get excited by that. I think you have to put yourself in their position. And I know there'll be plenty of people saying, well, he gets 200 grand a week or whatever. I know that. But like I said, they all get paid a lot of money, so forget the money. It's how you feel as a person. Do you feel valued at the club? And I can't believe that Nkunku and Felix feel valued at the club. And it is surprising, it is shocking to me that they're not getting anywhere near the amount of game time that we all thought they would. And we're basically running Jackson into the ground. And quite frankly, he's not doing a great job of it anyway. His game in general isn't bad. He chased a lot of balls down. He won a lot of 50-50 balls. I mean, there was a time in the first half where Jackson stormed down the left-hand side, having stole the ball, and he was homing it on goal. And as he gets to the 18-yard box, he just sort of duffs his touch and falls over himself. And you think, there's no composure with him. And I thought we kind of got past this stage. He'd scored a couple of very good goals before the mid-December period. He'd scored quite a lot of good goals, and he was very involved. And his finishing seemed to have got much better. And actually, the goal that he took, the one that I said that, he's a bit thick and he's always offside, he actually took that very well, in fairness to him. But he seems to need about 7 chances to put one away. And even then, you can't be completely convinced. Yeah, the striker hunt hopefully goes on, and if it's not going to be Nkunku or Felix helping it out Jackson, then we need it to be somebody else. You mentioned, Chris, there about feeling relieved at the final whistle. I mean, yes, I was the same. I couldn't really relax. I mean, we messaged each other and said, I'll feel happy when it's about 94 minutes of a 96-minute game. You just never believed. You felt as though if Wolves had nicked one in the 90th minute, on the 90th minute, with 6 minutes to go, that would have been a real hellish 6 minutes. And I'm not even sure we would have held out. I think someone would have made a complete clanger because the ball was just getting sucked towards our goal again. I don't know if you sort of even realise in the sort of melee of the last few minutes, but Wolves are getting back on top again like they did in the first half. And I had a moment to myself and I was thinking, if they score here, oh, wow, we can be right up against it. And if this ends up being 3-3 somehow from nowhere, I mean, the crowd are going to go ballistic. And I think when you get a run of games like we've had and they all come at the same time, it sort of senses, the crowd sense that Maresca's doing something wrong or he's drastically changed something, or, we're sort of questioning things like, why is he not playing Nkunku? When you're winning, no one gives a shit. If we're winning every single week and Nkunku hasn't played a minute, nobody cares because you're winning. And obviously Maresca knows his squad and knows what he's doing. I think we have to give him some credit. I think we have to give him some kudos for the win. However they come, Premier League wins are never that easy to come by. Doesn't matter how good you are, how big your squad is. And I think it's pretty natural for us to all feel a bit kind of, moany, a bit grumbly in some ways, because it's a natural reaction. We care so much about our teams that, a set of bad results does set you off on a bit of a bad mood. And, even today, walking round, I was at work, I was thinking to myself, yeah, it was a good win last night, but, what about Ipswich? What about Fulham? What about Everton? And even I'm struggling to get those results out of my head because I feel as though we should have beaten all of them. I really do. But I also realise that it's football and you can't win every game. You can't win every week. And I know that there'll be people saying, but Chelsea have got a very talented squad and, they spent a fair bit of dosh on this player and that player or whatever. They've made a mistake with Chalobah. Yeah, that's all been and gone. That's in the past. We have to look forward. We have to look forward to Man City now and hope to build on this result. And if we can get a positive result against Man City, which we are more than capable of doing, we did it last year when Raheem Sterling scored in the 1-1 draw. So we are capable of doing it. We just have to put the ball in the net. And unfortunately, that's where we're struggling to find our best form at the moment, which is really weird because we've scored so many goals at the start of the season. As we all know, at the time of recording here, there's been no transfer activity by many clubs, really. Chelsea aren't alone in that. Obviously, we have been linked with Garnacho from Man United. For me, feels like a very odd signing. I think he's a good player. I don't know what would happen if he came to Chelsea. I think Sancho proved that switching from United to Chelsea was beneficial to him in his career at this stage. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure where Garnacho's best position is. He's certainly not a striker. And I just think to myself, if you've already got currently in the club Nkunku, Palmer, and then you can throw in players like Felix, Neto, Madueke, like there's so many of that type of player. I don't really know where he'd play. Now, if you're going to spend 60 million on him or 70 million on him, then clearly you think he'd be a starter. But where does he fit in? And if he's got a specific role for him, then fine. But I don't believe that Chelsea really do this. I think they look, in my opinion, from what I see from Chelsea, buy players they think will suit the system. They don't necessarily have to play right away. But there's kind of a bracket, an age bracket, and a profile on that player, and they believe that they're suitable for for our club. But to me, it just feels like money spent in the wrong area at the moment. I mean, I know everybody thinks we need a striker. So if Chelsea try and place a bid for Duran today, just for example, Villa are going to demand a way load more money than if we were just sitting there with a decent set of strikers and we're like, oh, we don't really need it at the moment. But you can have 55 million because we're willing to pay that, but we're not going to overpay. Whereas Chelsea at the moment are probably going to overpay for somebody. But I do believe we still need a striker. But what's your thoughts on the Garnacho rumours, Chris? I'm personally not massively a fan of it at the moment. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a good player for the future. But for me at this stage, it's not somewhere we need to be spending our dosh.
Oh, Garnacho. It just feels like a massive distraction, doesn't it? Is the first thing that comes to mind. It's like going into the window, it was really clear, we've talked about it enough, that there was two things Chelsea needed: a centre-back and a centre-forward. I think centre-back thing feels like it's probably covered with Chalobah, based on the performance against Wolves. You can feel pretty confident there. And the centre-forward, as we've already talked about with someone like Duran, it's just, we need another option there. And Garnacho, the idea of buying another winger who doesn't score that many goals. In my head, I was like, does he score? And it was like, oh no, he scored 13 goals in near enough 80 games for Man United. He scored 7 last season. And for the money you'd be paying for him, was it 50 to 60 million? It just seems insane, to be honest. He's more of the same, I think. This might sound controversial. I think if we were looking to resurrect someone at Man United's career and we were linked to Rashford, I'd be a bit more excited. I mean, he'd have to drop his wages, but at least if you were bringing in Marcus Rashford, you'd be like, well, he has got a 20-goal season in him, and he's got it in him, and maybe we could resurrect his career as many players who've left Man United have. But with Garnacho, it just doesn't fill you with any excitement, does it? I think when we got Sancho, we had, probably all of us had a few concerns with him, but the money involved, obviously it was a loan with an option to buy at a ridiculously low price of 25 million. So it was a bit of a no-brainer, wasn't it? And to be fair to him, it looks like a fantastic piece of business. Garnacho at 50, 60 million, he's going to have to really go some to justify that. So, not just a distraction, just focus on what we need. The other thing to say about it is, we haven't really talked about this much on the pod, but it certainly would suggest that the Mudryk situation isn't going to come out very well. Obviously, they're waiting for the B results to come back, but it would sound like, his ban could be a long one, and his Chelsea career is probably going to be over, isn't it? And that's one for another pod, but what a disaster signing he has turned out to be, if that is the case. But certainly, I don't think you're looking to bring in someone like Garnacho, who is a right-footed winger who plays off the left, if they feel like the Mudryk news is going to come back good. Sorry if there's noise in the background, by the way. I'm walking through the streets of Munich. It is absolutely plastic. It's so cold. And, a bit of roadworks. The other thing, actually, just talking about January business, is I just can't understand why Chelsea haven't brought back either Ugochukwu or Andre Santos to help us out in the centre mid position. I mean, you only had to look at yesterday when obviously we made the changes, and suddenly, Cucurella played the last 15 minutes, didn't he, at centre mid. Ugochukwu is probably the one I'd do, because Andre Santos is doing so well at Strasbourg. Leave him there until the summer. But Ugochukwu, back in the Southampton team, playing well. He's massive. He's like 6'3", 6'4". You said it in pre-season. I think one of our first pods. You'd been to the Inter Milan game in pre-season, and you said they'll keep him around. He's a good player. He's scored a couple of goals in pre-season. Has a bit about him. He's got a massive presence, and I think if they brought him back, he'd have a big part to play for the rest of the season. Not just in the cup games, but in the Premier League. What a player to bring on when you need to close a game out with 15, 20 minutes to go. A friend Fard was like, Ginobili Mikel style. It just feels a bit of a no-brainer. And we are light in that area. But you've got someone like Lavia who, his injuries are just, it's a big problem, isn't it? And it just, to me, that would feel like a very easy and quick solution to the problem. But that doesn't sound like we're going to do it, and you do worry about us in that area. Come not just the game at City, because it sounds like Lavia is going to be missing, but beyond that as well. But we will be back after the City game to respond. It's a huge game. I think, in the words of my dad, I would buy a draw now. I think if we can get a draw and come out of that kind of relatively unscathed, it'd be a very, very good result. No reason why we couldn't win there, but I think we just need to put a run of results together now, don't we? And not start losing and dropping too many points. So draw at City and then go and win the next couple. And we're not in bad nick, but it is pretty tight at the top now. And Chelsea just have to keep the season back on track. But up the Chelsea, send us a 5-star review wherever you're listening, and see you next week. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.